May 2020. This was a tough time to be a storm chaser. With the COVID-19 pandemic and a very inactive tornado season, many of us were left disappointed if we even chased. I wasn't left empty-handed, however. There were still lots of storms and supercells, including some of the greatest structure in years. Storms on the Great Plains are uniquely breathtaking and awe-inspiring. Despite being a season with few tornadoes, this is May 2020 in the Great Plains. We begin our trip on May 13th in the Southern Plains. Broad and weak flow at 500 millibars contributed to barely enough effective shear for supercells at 30 to 40 knots. While the best shot at tornadoes was in southwest Kansas, capping was going to be a concern, so I instead targeted the dry line along the Texas and Oklahoma border. Leading the way today is a friend and chaser, Aaron Huttinger. Eventually, a storm would explode near Shamrock, Texas, and we were on our way. Upon arriving on the storm, we could tell it had already lost to the cap, and all that remained was the anvil and some burga. We pulled over to talk to some other colleagues and reassess the situation. So I've been watching this storm blow up, and it's got some mamatas on the underside of the anvil right now, but for the most part, this thing's pretty much done. Looks like the cap's winning on these cells for now. Still waiting on further development. There's got plenty of time. New storms would begin firing to our southeast in western Oklahoma. At first glance, I didn't have high expectations and was ready to call a cap bust. But little did I know that this measly updraft would explode into a spectacular display of how a supercell is born. I ended up sitting in a lawn chair for over an hour and a half watching this supercell develop. A strong line of storms to the south was growing, so after intercepting some hail, I moved to catch a classic Great Plains shell just in time for sunset. The next day's target was in the same area, and again, we were working with broad and weak 500 millibar flow with 30 to 40 knots of effective shear. This is still adequate for supercell development, however, and on the bright side, these storms were going to move very slowly. There was a higher chance for tornadoes in a messier, warm sector setup in southeast Kansas. But again, I targeted the dry line along the Texas and Oklahoma border. Dry lines are more favorable for isolated, stunning supercells, but capping is always a concern. And it looks pretty dead to me. Still some hope though, it's not over yet. On the satellite you can see this whole line of towers going up along here. All the way up there. Sure enough, our storms of the day fired up just in time for an insanely colorful sunset. This near-stationary supercell was hiding within the darkness. Lightning briefly allowed me to observe the magnificent structure. In front of me was a massive mothership supercell. A strong hook on radar suggested a potential tornado, but one did not materialize. It was getting late, and I needed to get some sleep before the third day in a row of chasing. On May 15th, I had higher hopes of seeing a tornado. Much more significant and widespread severe weather was forecast today. However, 500 millibar flow was rather pitiful despite a solid shortwave dipping into western Oklahoma. Yet again, we were working with minimal amounts of adequate wind shear. Instability was forecast to be on the extreme end, with over 5,000 joules per kilogram near the Red River. There was one major problem, however. A huge complex of storms in Oklahoma were moving into the target area, threatening to push a strong wall of cold air into our location and ruin the day. As I approached the complex in Lawton, it produced a solid shelf cloud, but this was not what we had hoped for. New cells began firing on the Red River, so I desperately bailed west in hopes for a supercell. Near Altus, Oklahoma, I pulled over to observe these new cells. Up ahead, that's Michael Gavan from Science out there, and meteorologist John Hominick.
I'm considering it.
Sunday looked all right. I haven't looked at all.
Like I said, I'm on a day-to-day basis.
It wasn't long before we knew our day was over. In the distance, you can see the complex's outflow kicking up dust. And it was heading right for us.
I was gonna say. She's a cold one, but.
Oh.
Hey, there it is.
Ah, yeah.
Oh. God, that's gross.
Good night.
Well, it was nice meeting you, Johnny.
Yes.
Usually I'm gonna have a glass of gasoline.
Wow.
I continued to chase into Texas, but quickly decided to call it off. Disappointed, I found a place to pull over and get some well-needed rest before a long drive to tomorrow's awesome setup. We are now on our 4th chase in a row, this time in New Mexico. Northwest flow at 500 millibars meant these storms were going to fire off the Rockies and move southward. In the high plains, one does not need much moisture to get supercells. We were working with barely 45-degree dew points. Our target put us near Springer, New Mexico. Racing the antelope up ahead are chasers Nick Kreitz and Spencer Dant. They're a couple of cool guys. You should check them out. It took a while for these storms to get going, but once they did, they put on an incredible show. Kind of stopped here.
Dude, I got that in slow. I got that on cam. I got that. Lightning cam.
We chased this storm for nearly 4 hours. This was a great way to finish the first wave of severe weather. With a few days off, I decided to visit a friend in Denver and see the Colorado Rockies for the first time. Unfortunately, my car broke down, but I got it fixed in a few days and chased a weak, unimpressive supercell on May 19th from Fort Collins, Colorado to Cheyenne, Wyoming with my friend. This was his first storm chase, but sadly, we didn't see much. On the 20th, there was a slightly more promising setup in southeast Wyoming. Right off the bat, a supercell exploded over the mountains with a rotating wall cloud. However, it wasn't long before storms congealed into a complex, and chasers were yet again left empty-handed. With nothing but a shelf cloud and some hail, I bailed and got a head start towards the next day's target. It's now May 21st, and chasers are fed up with the lack of tornadoes. Wind shear was less than adequate with no more than 30 knots effective shear forecast. The cap was strong and a skinny zone of instability was in place. I grudgingly targeted southwest Kansas near Scott City. Paul and I were late to the first supercell, but managed to catch it gusting out. It still showed signs of rotation, but cold outflow was quickly spreading out.
All right, so we've been on this storm that has been tornado warned. It was supercellular earlier, but it looks like it's taking on more of a shelf cloud appearance. There has been additional downdraft off on the southern edge of this, and it's pretty much shelving out at this point all the way down here. So it looks like we're transitioning from a tornado chase to a shelf cloud chase. Welcome to May 2020, where there are no tornadoes at all.
I failed to realize one key component of today's chase. I'm chasing in Kansas. I was so focused on capturing a tornado that I totally forgot that Kansas tends to pull some pretty amazing structure out of seemingly benign setups. I had no idea just how incredible this day was about to become. Already, we have supercell number 2 forming ahead of the first storm. And off to the south, new development to keep an eye on. Our first storm merged with the second supercell to form our third supercell, a massive beast mothership. Our new development quickly became our 4th and 5th supercells. You can see the giant mothership supercell in the mirror.
Even if there aren't tornadoes, this is Kansas right here.
I approached the new dominant supercell and positioned to observe from the south as it moved north-northeast.
Got another one back there yet.
This storm was exhibiting a beautiful, classic horseshoe base, a telltale sign that a tornado is very likely. Mesmerized and awestruck, I sat in my car watching this mind-blowing storm churn away in the flat, open Kansas terrain. This was a dream come true. Meanwhile, frequent cloud-to-ground lightning kept me inside the car out of concern that I may get struck. There is not much else in Kansas Prairie to get struck by lightning. An uptick in cloud-to-ground strikes is another sign that a tornado is likely. I kept pushing forward to get close in the event a tornado would form. Soon, we began getting funnels. The stacked plates of the supercell were visible above with the anvil and its beautiful mammatus clouds. Lightning flashes dance across the sky, and it was time to see a tornado.
absolutely incredible. Just a bowl structure all the way around. Tail cloud right there. Got the horseshoe directly above me. Oh, it's just amazing. All right, we got a tornado here. Nice. Oh, please tell me this is it. Come on. Come on, drop. Let's go. Come on. Come on. Funnel there. Funnel after funnel after funnel, and not one tornado. At one point, this storm even looked like it was going to produce twins. Regardless, I had just witnessed the best storm structure I've ever seen, and ended this day very happy. On the next day, I decided to take a day off and enjoy the area with some of my chaser friends. Of course, I missed a tornado in Texas, and my car would break down. Again. There was one last chase left in this stretch before a pattern would shut down chasing in the plains. Our final chase takes us to southwest Kansas again, this time with my awesome mother along. A trough was present with 40 to 50 knots of effective shear. Surface observations showed good dew points and backed winds. A very solid warm sector was forecast to establish with a dryline bulge pushing into the Dodge City area. This was a classic tornado setup, and we went for the obvious target.
Charlie just said that he swears there's a lowering. There it is.
Charlie is a good buddy of mine, and he is one excellent photographer.
Yeah, already got a lowering on this cell. That's amazing. Yeah, right.
Our storm would explode and immediately showed signs of producing a tornado. However, in classic 2020 fashion, Mother Nature found a way to throw us off. The cap would build, slowly choking off the storm. A small horseshoe vortex would be the closest thing to a tornado we would see on this final day. The storm did, however, manage to drop a rare, positive cloud-to-ground lightning strike. While the strike is out of frame, you're about to hear why these strikes are so cool.
Really close.
That was a positive CG, dude.
Yeah.
That's about as positive as it gets right there. 3 miles. 3 miles. I counted 15 seconds.
You did?
Hey, see, we start seeing more CG bolts like that. It's gonna be big time go time.
Oh yeah. Motion's still in there.
Motion's still there. Absolutely.
It wasn't big time go time. In fact, this day was pretty much over. I was treated to one last sunset as the dying storm withered away. Frogs croaked and birds chirped in blissful ignorance to the despair and disappointment felt by hundreds of chasers this May. May 2020 will go down as one of the worst Mays in storm chasing history.
Right, well,
With only a handful of photogenic tornadoes, most chasers left their annual pilgrimage empty-handed. However, I don't see it that way. The Great Plains put on a show no matter the situation. Excellent terrain, unique scenery, beautiful geology, and incredibly sculpted storms. While I was disappointed I didn't get a tornado, I was beyond satisfied with the chases I had, and I cannot wait to get back out there in 2021.